Hello, I think we're live. I hope some people are there. Do say hello in the chat and let me know where you're tuning in from, and also let me know if there are any sound issues because I can't tell myself. So it's great to see you all on this Sunday evening, and I wanted to try this out. This is my second ever live stream. And the reason for putting this into the schedule is that I get quite a lot of comments and questions to my videos, and I try to answer as many of them as I possibly can, and do apologise if I have missed you. I do get quite a few comments, and I'm very aware that some of those questions are about topics that many people might have questions about. So I thought it might be a good idea to gather some topics up and tackle the questions live. And you're also very welcome to put questions in the live chat as well, and I'll try and get to those at the end. But so you know what I'm definitely going to cover. So I've grouped them into roughly three broad areas, and I've got my notes down here. So some ideas about handling hostility from co-workers. So this comes up quite a lot, and a lot of you tell me that you find the scripts that I share, sort of ideas about sentences you can use, really useful. So I've got some of those for you today. Another topic that's come up recently is about when high performers are targeted for abuse and discrimination. So I'm going to cover that. And the last area is about personal resilience in a difficult workplace. So I'm going to get to that as my third area. But as I say, if you've got questions that you'd like to raise with me, do pop them in the chat and I'll try and cover them today. And even if you're watching this on catch up, put the question in anyway, and I will see it, I promise. So the first area is around handling hostility in the workplace. And one of the areas that people have raised is about when expertise becomes a target. So topics around ageism, and also somebody asked about sort of non-verbal discrimination and sort of when people roll their eyes and that kind of thing, and what to say in those circumstances. So I've got some ideas here, and I think firstly the eye roll, or a change of tone in a room when you walk in. I think that kind of hostility is often a projection of insecurity. So that kind of people may be using those because they're sort of feeling a bit overwhelmed. They don't know quite how to express themselves, if I'm being kind to the people doing this. And so what I think you can do is to sort of try and call it out, but in a calm way. And so that's where I've got some possible scripts that might be useful. So here, sorry, my notes have just rolled down. So yeah, so instead of getting angry in the moment, try your best to kind of use a neutral observation. So you could say something like, so if someone rolls their eyes, when you catch them out of the corner of your eye, you say something like, I noticed you had a reaction to that point. Is there a different perspective that we should consider? And that, saying something like that, and I know it's really hard because it's upsetting when you're on the receiving end of this kind of behavior, but saying something like that just really calmly, really clearly, will shift the power back to you without you being difficult. So you're just asking for some more information. You're not being difficult in the moment. And there's another script here that I've got, is that if someone is looking sort of annoyed while you're presenting or something, or they're having another emotional kind of look on their face and they're not asking a question, you could maybe say something like, you look like you've got some thoughts on this. I'd love to hear your take before we move to the next slide. So maybe something like that, or your version of it. When I say these sentences, I don't mean you to kind of just literally take my words, but your way of expressing yourself. And it signals again that you're observant, that you've noticed that their that their kind of rude face or whatever it is there, and it also signals that you're not letting yourself be bothered by their behavior. Now, you might be bothered inside, and I, would completely understand that. But so it's a way of kind of dealing with that and just kind of but without being aggressive or, in any way looking like you're bothered. So keeping your calm is a really good thing to do. Another scenario, you feel the energy in the room shift, or people start whispering when you talk. Again, something like, I want to make sure everybody is on the same page before we continue. Does anyone have a concern that they'd like to voice now so we can address it? So that's another kind of example of something. It sort of tries to stop those sub conversations going on and brings the focus back to the kind of formal agenda, which you're the person presenting, or you're controlling. And when, if you say something and they counter with, because somebody asked me this in a comment, they said, but what if they say, well, I didn't do anything? What if they gaslight you, or they accuse you of being oversensitive? Just say something like, I just want to ensure our communication is clear as possible, and move on. So you just try to kind of keep the power with you, and just keep calm, and just move on, and don't get into a kind of tit for tat argument about what they did, or whether they rolled their eyes or whatever. So just kind of accept whatever they say, and kind of pivot back to the topic in hand. So I think an important thing with these scripts is not just the kind of what you say, but it's also the way you say it. So try to kind of use pauses, let your point land, and try to kind of keep, count to 3 in your head is often what people say when you're kind of feeling stressed. And that silence is where that sort of toxic, that person that's been, done that poor behavior has to sit with their behavior, and hopefully reflect a little bit about what they've done. So the other area I get quite a lot of questions about is around being targeted when you're a high performer. So you do your work really well, and then you are in a performance review and you think it's being weaponized against you. And a lot of people make comments about sometimes performance reviews feeling like traps, or feeling like when their manager calls them aside, they feel nervous, they don't know what's going to be said. And this is a real paradox in a way, because it's often those high performers that are experiencing this, and I think that this is often because they represent a threat to the manager. So if the manager feels insecure in some way, and this is not to excuse this behavior at all, but they might then try and squish people down. And you may have heard the words tall poppy syndrome. It's kind of like, saying the people that sort of stand up, that are, good performers, being kind of cut down. And it's often that your good performance is causing resentment. Now, that doesn't make it any easier to deal with when you're at the receiving end of it. But I think, to know that it's not about you, it's not something you've done wrong, it's about them and their feelings, hopefully kind of helps you feel a bit better, even though, it's not good that this is happening at all. And I think that if that sort of, if you get called to one side to have a conversation at short notice, and you get caught off guard, and then you wish, gosh, I wish I said this, or you feel like the conversation hasn't gone as you would want it to have done, then I think the thing to do there is to document it immediately afterwards. So maybe send a follow-up email, something like, to ensure I'm on the right track, can I just check what we agreed, and add in, what else you might have wanted to say. So, just sort of be clear, or just add the thing that you didn't say, and another point that I wanted to raise was this. So I think a lot of people underestimate the power of documenting what's going on, and making sure things are in writing. And another question that somebody asked me was around whether culture can be fixed. And culture is often the thing that organizations kind of leave at the bottom of the pile, because changing culture is hard, it takes time, it takes commitment, and it is absolutely has to be led from the top. So anybody that claims that you can fix a culture, quickly with a team away day and a donut afterwards or something is fooling themselves. So I sort of, that's why I talk quite a lot in my videos about trying to work out whether a situation is redeemable. Like, will something change? Like, is the situation you're going through at the moment, is it because of one particular manager? Is it because of one particular project? Is it because of one set of circumstances? Or is it something that is kind of, not going to change overnight? And working that out for yourself will help you decide whether it's worth your while staying there, or frankly having to make another choice, which I know is really, really, really tough. But toxic workplaces, that is like the rot is at the top, sadly. And if the top leadership team shows absolutely no sign of self-awareness of what's going on, if they're not making shifts to tackle things, then that's on them, and it's really poor. And that's why I make these videos, is try to get these messages across, that is not acceptable. But it's kind of like knowing whether you're what I talk, these issues are systemic. You are not to blame for them. You are experiencing something that is a system that is not, it's not about you. And then the last topic, and I can see there's some questions coming up in the chat, so we'll get to those. So another area that people have asked me about quite a lot is about how to, so if you can't, if you are experiencing really difficult workplace, whether it's toxicity or discrimination, or you're feeling stuck in your career, how do you stay resilient in those circumstances? And some viewers have raised issues around discrimination and racism in the office. And in fact, somebody asked me about how to stay resilient while navigating this. And I want to be crystal clear about this. This isn't just toxic behavior, and it isn't just about personal resilience. It's often a legal matter. And so anyone who's experiencing this has my full solidarity. So what I would encourage you to do here, and clearly I'm based in the UK, or if you didn't know, I'm based in the UK. I don't know about the legal situation around the world. So the thing to do here is to find out about your own legal rights, find out about your workplace discrimination policies, if there are any. Get advice, if you can, get legal advice, or get trade union advice, and keep a record of what's going on. As I say, documenting things is your friend here. Dates, times, who said what, who did what, written down. And often people ask me about, well, there weren't any witnesses, is there any point documenting? Well, what I would say to that is that a contemporaneous record, so a record of something that happened, that you wrote it down in the moment. So if something happened and you've written the date and you did it at that time, and you build up that set of records, that will stand you in really good stead. And if you do go and seek advice, having that all written down will really help you. And if you're UK based, I always point people at the ACAS website. So that's acas.org.uk, and they've got some really good resources, and they also have a helpline that you can contact. And then the last point I think on here is about a lot of you telling me that you just cannot wait till retirement. That many of you, I think, are probably around my sort of age. So I'm in my late 50s, and so people are sort of thinking, oh, I'm just limping along until retirement. And I really feel for you. And again, that's sort of why I make this content, because I try to kind of open up the idea of different ways of progressing. And I think the idea of people being miserable at work and just having to bide their time, it kind of breaks my heart, because we haven't got forever. And so for those in survival mode, and you've got toxicity going on around you, I often talk about the becoming as uninteresting as possible, so that not rising to people's if people are sort of targeting you, not rising to it, just become uninteresting. Try to not let it get to you. Do the job as best you can. Do the hours that you're supposed to do. and protect your emotional energy. Don't, you know, don't let it, you know, try as best you can not to let it get to you. And try to see that your value is beyond your job title. So you are not just whatever it is that the job that you do. You've got, you know, life outside work, and you've got other good things, I hope, going on around you. So trying to kind of cling on to those, and you know, spend your energy where you get your joy, is what I would recommend. But you know, as I say, I know it's easy. It's not easy to be living in those situations, and like, you know, that's been the inspiration for this channel. So there's lots of content about protecting your energy and trying to survive a toxic workplace. And I had a comment from somebody talking about victimhood and saying that, you know, they don't like victims. And I, you know, I hope I get this across, but the whole thing about this channel is, like, I don't see anybody here as victims. Like, you know, these are systemic issues that we're navigating. And so we're, you know, and anybody that's trying to make a change in their, you know, in their life and move forward is certainly not a victim of, you know, of whatever's going on with them. So that is not the message that I want to get across at all. So so yeah, I'm going to try and have a look at your comments. Oh, it's people sharing terrible experiences. Yes, ageism, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people responded to the video I made a couple of weeks ago about feeling invisible at work, that you feel like you're being passed over. And I had comments from younger people saying, but, you know, maybe your experience isn't up to date. Well, I would sort of challenge that, you know, because we're all learning all the time, and we're all advancing, and we've got all of our years of experience plus whatever the technical experience and expertise is to do with the job, whatever the job is. So I think, you know, valuing us older workers is something that, you know, really this economy needs. And, you know, nobody should be being sort of brushed off and feeling like they're worthless. So so you have full solidarity here, and I think in the comments as well. Yeah, well, I can see lots of comments to each other, and I think that's one of the things I have really been heartened by in the comments to my channel, is when I see people supporting each other, you know, people sharing their experiences, and then other commenters backing them up or sharing their experience, and people really, you know, I see hundreds of, you know, likes, you know, comments and things, and it is a really heartening community to have, which I really want to maximise as possible, and maximise as much as I can. And I'm looking at different ways to connect you all. So I'm looking at two things I've had feedback about, because I know that one-to-one coaching isn't for everybody. And so two other ideas are to create a closed community where you can be in a member of a community, and then you can engage with each other behind, like, obviously these are public comments. I know that may well hold you back. So somewhere where you can be maybe more open about what you're going through. And then the other piece I'm thinking about is group coaching, so small group. So you get, you know, sort of a closed, like on a Zoom, and maybe with 6 or 8 people with me, and we share what's going on. So do let me know, because I'm working on these ideas through the summer. And so I've got some time in August that I want to kind of try and pilot something or move it forward. So any feedback you've got from me, what you would really like to be part of, what you would find helpful, then let me know, because I'm really keen to build on this, build on what we've built already, and take it forward. So I don't know if I've got any questions. I've got sort of thank yous for the content. Thank you so much. So somebody's asking me about managing the burnout from trying to find an alternate job when in a toxic job. So burnout is something that comes up a lot. And I think that the dreadful thing about burnout is it stays with you. It doesn't just go. So if you leave the job that caused the burnout, and I've got, sadly, various friends, personal friends who've been through this, that the burnout kind of lingers on. And I called it like a toxic job hangover. It sort of stays there. And I think that, you know, the things to do would be, you know, to really try to protect your energy, find ways to be away from that workplace. I can't, let me just see, what did you say? That you're still in the job. So if you're still in the job where you're experiencing burnout, then protect your energy and make sure that you're, not being drawn into doing long hours. If you don't need to, try and do your job and restrict the way that the job kind of, sort of strays into other parts of your life. So try to kind of, draw a line between your job and what you have to do, and then all of the rest of your life. And then in all of the rest of your life, do as much as you can to protect your energy, and do the things that give you positivity, whatever those things are, and try to kind of recover well at the weekends. And it's not easy. These, I don't have easy answers for you, because these are difficult issues that people are experiencing. If I had like a pill I could give you, or it's just like any form of kind of mental ill health, or or physical ill health, it's about recovery and doing the things that you need to do to recover from that terrible experience. But no, it can take time, so don't be surprised if it lingers with you, even if you've left that terrible job. And people tell me that they're retired and they still have memories from difficult jobs from 10 years ago, still wake up with a cold sweat all these years later. And that shows me how how damaging these environments can be to people. So as people sharing their experiences. No, you have my full solidarity for the experiences that you've been through. And somebody mentions working in a charity, and a small charity, and that's been most of my professional life has been in the voluntary sector. And sadly, it's the caregiving, purpose giving sectors where it almost seems worse, which is counterintuitive. So people talk to me about the NHS, so they talk to me about nursing, they talk to me about social care, they talk to me about charities, and it breaks my heart. This is people going into these jobs to do good and to help other people, and then the circumstances in those organizations are so pressured, and with limited resources, high demand for those services, and people being really stretched. And then that leads to in some cases terrible behavior from managers, and people are being often in performance. There's a thing in performance, in staff surveys in charities, which I've observed, where you get very high scores on people feeling proud to work for that charity. So people feel, really glad that they work there, and they're really, proud of what they do. But then you also, in a counter, get bullying, toxic workplaces, and people being damaged. So the tension between those two is that people feel proud, and so they want to work there. They go beyond, they go above and beyond, they work beyond their hours, they do everything they can to provide the good service of whatever it is, the cause that they're working for. But they're experiencing a terrible workplace. So it's like it's kind of almost more important, where you've got that high level of pride and drive from your workforce, to make sure that they're not being pushed to do more than they should do in a difficult workplace, or being bullied, or whatever it is. That those two things are really in tension with each other. And again, something I've seen in my work outside YouTube, and I don't accept it as being inevitable. I absolutely don't. So that's, again, inspiration for why I do this content now. So somebody's asking me about somebody with a toxic and insecure, nasty boss who is threatened by you. So I think, as I was just saying, that often that behavior is about jealousy or insecurity, as you refer to. So it's not about you, I think. And if it's a remote workplace, I think it's even it's more difficult, because I guess you're working from home and you're not with other people. So that means that those those interactions with that boss are coming into your home. So if you're working like this on a Zoom, and I think that's what, I'm a big advocate for home working and remote working, but at the same time remembering that you need to have boundaries between your work and your home life, and having your boss's face like literally in your home is not necessarily a healthy situation. I think the thing to be doing there is to keep on doing your job, document behaviours. If you've got objectives that have been set, document them and make sure that they're not able to say that you're not meeting your objectives. So if they're starting to kind of, get at you, then your weapon against that is to really protect yourself in terms of really making sure that it's clear what you should be doing in your job, what you are doing in your job, that you are meeting your targets, and that that you've got this kind of performance shield around you that they can't sort of say that you're not. So I think that would be something that I would advise there, and protect your protect your well-being, and try and protect your peace as best you can by creating some form of distance between yourself and your work, so that you're not, if you are working from home and your screen is in your workplace, at the end of the day, shut your laptop and be very clear that it's the end of the work day. Almost have some sort of end of work day ritual that you do that signals to your body and your mind that you've come to the end of the day, and then you just walk away from that desk and you go and do nice things in your spare time that you want to be doing, and protect. If it goes beyond toxic, then and if it goes into worse behaviors, then anything you've documented will be could be useful if you need to go another route. Okay. So somebody's asking me about how to document and have I made a template. I haven't made a template, because in a way it can be any template that you want to use, but maybe if it would be useful, I can make a template. I mean, essentially it's like a diary of what's going on. So if you are experiencing workplace, say it's a toxic workplace and somebody's saying things to you that are making you uncomfortable, as an example, the date, where you were, who was there, what was going on, what time was it, as much concrete evidence as you've got of what happened. And so X person said this sentence, it made me feel uncomfortable, and then I left the room, or whatever it is, and just as much detail as you can. And sometimes I get pushback from people saying, I haven't got time to, but literally in the moment, write down, you could do it on, do it in your phone, on your notes app, just as much as possible. And as I've said earlier, a record made in the moment with, dates, times, who it was, what they said, as much detail as you've got, how it made you feel, will stand up. People say, but it's my word against that. If you've got all of that, you've got your evidence. Now, I can't, sort of guarantee what outcomes will be if you do have to, go down some form of process. But if you're in a workplace with a bullying, an anti-harassment or anti-bullying policy, they will have a process for you making a complaint. And if you've got that information and you're not just saying, John made me feel bad, you're saying, John did this on this day, and then the next Tuesday he said that, if you've got all of that evidence, then it will stand you in good stead. And I've talked to people that work in in employment law and in human resource teams, and those records do stand you in better stead than if you haven't got them. So if you can build up that sort of evidence base, then it will really help. And I think just as a side benefit of writing it down, it gets it out of your head and into a notebook, and you can close the notebook, and in a way that sort of symbolizes that it's written down, and I can try not to think about it all the time. So in a way that kind of mentally helps you as well. So okay, I will mission for me is to make you a template. Life with Gen X values. I don't know what your name is, but I will make you a template. And and the best way to make sure I do is to you've got ways to contact me on, you know, I put all my contact details underneath the video, so do look at that if you want to. Okay, so I said I was going to do half an hour. I've done half an hour. I've covered the content I was going to cover. It's been great to have these chats, and if you've enjoyed this and you found it helpful, then do let me know, because you know, I'm learning about this. You know, my channel is relatively new. This is only my second live stream. I'm just aware that people might have questions and I want to make sure that I'm answering them. So this is the idea behind that. So I was thinking maybe do these once a month, maybe the last Sunday of the month. And this kind of time maybe works for people in the US and the UK, but do tell me if it doesn't. But clearly this video will be on demand, so people can watch this later on when it's uploaded, so you can watch it at your leisure. So if you've got questions that you want to ask, then do pop them in here. And you know, I'm just very honoured to be able to, you know, help people. And when I get comments where people tell me they've been helped, it makes it all worthwhile. So even if I do get a bit nervous, if I'm honest. And what else? Oh yes, the other thing I was going to mention is so when I launch my community and whatever happens next with that, I will probably let my newsletter subscribers know first. So do make sure that you're subscribed to that as a shameless plea, because that's probably where I'll be announcing it first, because obviously not everybody sees the videos, whereas an email into your inbox is a bit more direct. So do subscribe to that, and the links are below. So oh, people saying thank you for being here. Right, I'm going to switch this off now and I'm going to get on with my Sunday evening. But big love to you all. My full solidarity. If you're nervous about going to work tomorrow morning, even more full solidarity, because it's a crappy situation to be in. But remember that we're all here rooting for you and you're not alone. Okay, I'm going to head off. Thanks so much. Bye.